we met a man who changed our lives. Baba, as we affectionately call Hariharananda, gave us the incredible gift of his unconditional love. And then he gave us the further gift of allowing us to return that love to him. It changed all of us.
I heard about Kriya through a friend of mine. One day I was visiting her and she showed me a picture of Swami Hariharananda and she told me about him, and the closer she grew to him and the more she knew about Kriya Yoga, the more she would tell me. Baba was scheduled to come and give a talk at the Chuck Leviton Gallery, early September of 1982, and I went. I saw him as a divine being floating into the room. He was walking extremely straight, regal, divine. He carried the presence of God in and around him, and I was elated to see that. He sat down in silence and looked around the room in complete silence, spending a few moments looking sincerely in everyone's face. And if he couldn't see someone's face clearly, then he made a motion with his hand this way or that way for them to move so he could see them. And you could feel him connecting with each and every person in that room, acknowledging each one as an individual and making a heartfelt connection with each one. And all this was done in silence. Then he sat there and he went to the top of his head and above and looked above the class for some time in silence. And then he drew his hand around his head like this, and he says, God is remaining above. And he said, your animal qualities are below, the God is remaining above.
In one sentence, I am going to complete the whole Gita. Do you follow me? With the knowledge body, if you can control your evil bodies, million soldiers, external, by the help of Lord God, who is remaining in the kingdom of heaven, he is invisible. Lord Krishna is not visible.
I heard of Hariharananda in 1982 when he was coming to the United States. I went to hear a lecture of him, but I wasn't initiated because I wasn't sure he was the right guru. So in 1984, he came again. I heard the lecture again, and something just clicked. And I went the next day. Paramahamsa Hariharananda looked at me and said to me, big man, you know Nimkroli Baba? I said, I studied about him. He's Ram Dass's guru. He said to me, you look exactly like him. You have your same face and same big body. He said, the only thing, he said, you're not as dark as him because he was born in India, but you were born in New York. He said, what is your name? I said, Ron. He said, no. He said, your name is Nimkroli Baba. So since 1984, Gurudev and called me by the name of Nimkroli Baba. The day I was initiated, it was wonderful. I was a Vietnam vet, and I didn't know about the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna and Krishna. It was awful being in a war. And I looked into his eyes and I started to cry. And being a loving father that he is, he wiped the tear from my eye and he said, "Don't cry. Today is your birthday." He said, "You are the living power of God." And then he took my hands and he says, "I wash the hands of God. I wash the feet of God." Nobody in any religion ever called me God. Nobody ever told me that I was the living power of God. And from that time, I knew that he was the guru that I was looking for. And I knew that I would follow this man the rest of my life.
Again, I want to bow everybody. You are all living power of God in the universe.
I heard about Baba before I met him. There was a party for New Year's in my Brooklyn loft. And a man came to the party and he told me, when I was talking about wanting a more intimate relationship with the guru, he told me there was a man who came to New York every year, and he had an incredible touch, and he thought his name had 2 H's in it. So I was looking through the catalog for the Open Center, and suddenly there was this picture, and suddenly I knew this was the monk that I was looking for. And I decided to go to the Friday night program, and that's where I first met Baba, at the Open Center. When I had been with Baba for just a few weeks, I asked the Yogacara if I could have a private meeting with Baba. And so it was arranged that I would go to Felix Baba's, which was on East 31st Street on the 17th floor. So I went there and I rang the buzzer, nothing. And I rang the buzzer, nothing. So I decided I would sit on the floor and wait. Now that's what I did, and I sat there for about an hour. And then another devotee, Virginia Ma, came and she laughed and she said, "Baba must have turned his hearing aid on." And so he came to the door, let us in, and told us to go to the kitchen and prepare lunch for the 3 of us. I sat on the floor on Baba's left and Virginia was on his right. And Baba took his fingers and fed me like a little baby bird the food that we were sharing. And then he indicated we should clear away the food and come and meditate. And we went and meditated for about an hour, completely blissed out, totally.
I'm always at that moment where I first met Baba, and it's always astonishing that such a thing could have happened to me, that you could have met such a person like that. At that time, he was here a lot in New York. He was always working really, really hard, like on each student, to make sure you got it, and he would always take care of you, like a mother, like a father. He would always tell you to get this looked at. You're having pain here, and it would go away. He was always like that.
You would go to meditation and you would have questions. And by the end of meditation, all your questions had been answered. You hadn't asked, but all the questions were answered.
And he would spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks in New York, and then he'd travel to another city, and then back to New York, and then to another city, and then back to New York. So we saw quite a bit of him throughout his time frame in the US every summer. He would typically arrive at the beginning of the summer and then leave the first week of October. When he was there, we had meditations every night, and we were expected to come every night.
Practice, practice, practice. Practice will make you perfect.
After meditation, everybody would just sit there with just just sit there, not saying anything. Everybody would just sit around there with him.
And I remember even meditating with him on the night of the 4th of July, which for me was unheard of. I mean, up until then, every 4th of July, I was out celebrating with the fireworks and making party with my friends. So to be sitting in Chuck Leviton's gallery and hearing the fireworks go off while Baba's guiding meditation, that was a whole new experience. And that happened several years in a row.
If you get triple quality in one inhalation, the touch sensation of God, you are hearing divine sound, you are getting calmness, your 5 sense telephones is locked, you are almost invisible, you have no sense of body. Do you follow me? You have reached on the invisible stage, beyond talk, beyond sight, beyond hearing, beyond touch sensation. You are calmly sitting and absorbed on the whole, from where the divine entered into the body.
Once again, when Baba was returning from Europe, many of us were going to meet Baba at the airport. And I got to the airport and I kept thinking, I had my old green camper van, and I kept thinking, Baba's not going to come to my car. Everybody has cars that are much more comfortable. They're new, they're modern, and he'll go to one of those other cars. So I was resigned to that. Well, we get there. What happens? Baba comes to my car. They have to load his luggage into my car. And when Baba's sitting next to me, and when we start out, he's directing me through the tunnel. Gene is driving along at the top, and he sees us going in there, and he knows there's no way he can get there. He and I got to Ralphie's house, which is here in New York, downtown, before everybody else did. And of course, they were all very, very surprised. And after that, whenever I would go and meet Baba at the ashram or wherever else, Baba would point to me and say, do you remember the time Felix Baba was so unhappy because I went to your car? So he was teaching you that sometimes when you have a desire fulfilled, someone else's desire is not fulfilled. Very, very, he never let me forget that, ever, ever.
At the time I was initiated, my daughter was 5 years old. And she used to come with me all the time. He used to tell me, he said, bring her. And if I saw him and she wasn't there, he would say, bring her. So I always did. And when she was 10, he initiated her. And he helped her a lot, and he told her a lot of things about her life, And so far, it's been amazing.
The Kriya Yoga technique, it requires some practice to control of senses. You can do everything. Your amity in the family will increase because you are remaining there below. So there is friction and fight, quarrel among the family. If you can control your senses, you will get amity in the family life. No clash. The friendship will increase among the friend. The misunderstanding will disappear. You will go above this. Inside, on the divine place, you can judge 1,000 times what you are doing, what you are to do. You will get balance of mind. And then automatically, you will get everything. You will remain in the family. You will do everything. Your evils will disappear automatically. You are not to force.
It was like 1984, perhaps. And we received word that while he was in Germany, he had a very severe health condition, and it was needed for us to send money to him. So I did, because I thought, oh, he has to come back. He has to teach me. Finally, I had initiation, but now he has to teach me. I need to learn. So he did get better, and he did come back. And then he was teaching, and for the first 3 days, for some reason, I kept arriving late to the class. And then at the end of the third class of my arriving late, the center leader came over to me, and she said, Elizabeth, Baba wants to see you. He has something to tell you, something to say to you. I thought, uh-oh, he's going to yell at me because I've been late. And I went over to him feeling all nervous, and I sat down on the ground next to his chair. He leaned over and he said, so you're Elizabeth. And he took his hand and he stroked his cheek, like my cheek like this, with the back of his forefinger. I had never felt anything so tender and so sweet in all my life. And I was stunned, because here I was expecting to be reprimanded for being late, and instead he's lovingly stroking my cheek and saying, so you're Elizabeth. He said, thank you so much for your donation during the winter when I was sick. It made a big difference. And he repeated the exact amount to the penny that I had given. And I was so stunned. And so he won me over in that moment with his extreme love. And I was never late again.
Remain compassionately detached, then your life will be golden. You are divine.
I'll take you back to the first time I met Baba Hariharananda. It was 1995. Baba had been in the West or coming to America for at least 20 years at that point. The flyer, or it was billed as Sunday morning or Sunday breakfast with Baba, I believe. And it was at a place called Chuck's Gallery. I caught a ride up with Neva and Suresh Baba from Maryland, and really didn't know what to expect. Came to the meditation hall. There were maybe 100 people or so there, and sat down. I think there was a guided meditation, and after the guided meditation, there seemed to be a buzz in the room. People were maybe excited. There was a lot of movement. As he comes closer to the door, the room gets very silent and still, but it's almost as if somebody turned on the lights, but there were no lights to turn on. It was, the middle of the day. But I remember that the room kind of lit up a little bit, and he came to the front door and he looked at everybody. Just, kind of scanned everybody in the whole room, completely silent, walked over, sat down. The room was still, and I definitely said, wow, who is this that even before he came into the room, had so much, control over what was happening in the room. Then everybody lined up for satsang, and, including myself. And still, again, I was new, and I remember looking at some of the older disciples, Suresh Baba, and particularly Bradrayu Baba. And he was sitting there, and I just remember the extreme love and devotion. He was just 100% focused on Hariharananda, just watching him. And when it was his turn to come up and bow, there was like this look of relief and joy that I'd never seen in anybody. And I was like, oh, I really want, I want to experience that. So, the early days were very much watching everybody else and sort of experiencing what it meant to be a Kriya Yogi through other students. So that was my first memory, and I remember, going up and bowing to Baba, and really didn't know what what it meant for me, but I remember distinctly what it meant for others.
He loved New York City.
He loved New York.
He would say it's incredible to meditate in New York City because the energy, the power, the feeling of everything, of all the people's thoughts and vibrations, and still to meditate and focus and be one with the loving energy of God was absolutely incredible.
And he would insist that all the visitors go to the Empire State Building and to the World Trade Center. And he loved the intensity of New York, and he loved the way all the buildings were close together and drew people together, and the energy in New York. He had no problem with the noise. He would stay in Mark Sclafani's apartment for many years on 3rd Avenue. He would sleep in the bedroom, which had the windows right on 3rd Avenue. So you can imagine the level of noise and no air conditioning. And it was no problem for him to sleep there, not at all. And he said one time he had a gentleman visiting from India, and they were sharing the bedroom. And in the morning, the Indian gentleman awoke and said, "Oh, I didn't get a moment's sleep during the night. That noise, all those cars and horns, and I couldn't sleep at all. How did you sleep?" And Baba said, "No problem. Just go there, close, gone." He showed us how he could live such a simple life and be so happy and so elegant, particularly in that moment in time. He was sleeping on just a mattress on the floor. Also in Felix's house, that's what he preferred, was a mattress on the floor at that time. And then during the day, he just tilted the mattress up against the wall to give him a little more room to move around. And he had a lamp with a bare light bulb, and several times people brought him a lampshade to put on top of the light bulb, and he'd just take it off. It didn't bother him to look at their bare light bulb. I learned from him how to live a more simple life.
I remember one time we weren't at Chuck's, we were somewhere else, and we couldn't meditate there because there was another group there. A lot of times there was confusion that way, and Baba walked us to the park on 14th Street, and we sat for meditation there. But I remember on the way there, he asked a cop, he said, "Do you mind if we sit?" And he said, "Sure." So, and at that time, 14th Street Park was very bad. I think it was just not a good place, but we sat for meditation there. That was kind of odd outside in New York in a park like that. Even walking down there with him, he was, it was an adventure. Everything was an adventure.
He used to be dressed in saffron, and he used to like to go take a walk. He used to love going to Union Square Park on 14th Street. And people would come up to him and ask him, "Who are you?" And he always would talk to them about Kriya Yoga. Always. People would congregate. And sometimes the police would come over and they would ask, "What's going on?" And it was so funny because they didn't know what to make of it. I mean, here was this little man just talking to people about love, about God, about the breath. And it was absolutely incredible. That's what he loved about New York. Always. People would always follow him. And he never was worried. Never.
So by the practice of this technique, Kriya Yoga technique, you can quicken your process, shortcut process. Just the Concorde is running from New York to Paris within 3 hours and is reaching. So you require the quickest technique, shortcut technique. You require the realized yogi.
I had the great honor of often driving him different places, and he would sit next to me in the car, and he would lean over and whisper in my ear, "Mother, when you first wake up, before you move your head from your pillow, listen." Baba knew I was having trouble hearing divine sound, but I was too proud to ask him. So he did two things. He killed my pride and gave me the advice I needed.
If you calmly sit, you'll be able to hear so many sounds through Kriya Yoga in 1 day, 2 days time. This is Kriya Yoga technique.
When he would come down, he would give talks. He would always walk around and point to the top, show you different techniques, very loving.
Baba would just put his finger here. Very often you would be in meditation and he would be beating you on the head.
He would go and bang you on the head. He really would. He would bang you on the head and give you really hard bangs.
To make sure that your attention was in the right spot, whether it was here or whether it was the third eye, you know.
He would always tell funny stories. He was like a loving grandfather. That's what he was. He was really great because physically he was able to do initiation, and it was great to be initiated by him. But Baba was very funny. He was very funny.
Even the times when he was really sick, he would come, and the doctor had told him because of his blood pressure, he should, be resting, and he would always come, and he would always work hard to tell you things and to make sure you were sitting straight. Baba was always talking about Mahamudra. He spent he really talked about it all the time. Mahamudra, you have to do it, you have to do it. And at that time, we were doing a lot of Mahamudra. And he would say he would do this for us and all the things he would do, and you would never get these diseases. So one day, I noticed my skin had been breaking out. It really looked nice, and I thought, wow, I wonder if it's the Mahamudra. And then I thought, that's an odd thought, a random thought, it just popped in my head. And the next time I saw Baba, he said to me, I see you notice your skin. And it was so shocking, because I can't even put that in words.
1 ounce of practice is worth tons of theories. So, sit 5 minutes, 10 minutes, this is scientific technique. Breath, only breath. Oxygen is the nutrition of the brain. And that pure oxygen is passing all over your body, so you are getting equal strength in your whole system. You are so strong. It gives simultaneous development of body, mind, intellect, and soul.
And one time in Mark Scafani's apartment, I had the job to prepare a meal for him to take to the airport. And so there were green beans and rice and dal and spinach. So I thought, okay, I need 4 different little plastic containers. So we don't have this in the apartment. So I went dashing out to try to find. I did manage to find 4 little containers, brought them back, and I started putting the food in the 4 little containers. And just before I had started to do that, I looked and Baba was at the other end of the apartment at 3rd Avenue, at the extreme other end. And just as I started to put the first spoonful into the little container, he was at my side. I thought, how did he do that so quickly? It was like in a flash. And he said, no, I don't want 4 little containers. Put everything in 1 big container. And I looked at him. I looked at my 4 little containers that I just spent a half an hour searching for. And then he stood there and he gave direction. First, put in the rice. So I put in the rice. And he said, okay, stop. Now put in the dal. Okay, stop. Now put in the green beans. Stop. Now put in the spinach. And then it was full. And he goes, now put in the spoon. I looked at him like, are you serious? He said, put the spoon in. So I put the spoon in the food. And he goes, now put the lid on. And he goes, good. Well, that's how he taught us, the things that we just couldn't believe. And then we went with him to the airport, and he took out his one single container of food. He took the spoon out from the middle, cleaned it off, and then ate his food. And indeed, it was a real lesson for me in simplicity, because I saw I had wasted time running around looking for those 4 little containers, wasted money, and it would have been awkward, you know. Here he had just like 1 container. He didn't eat all of it, just ate part of it, put the spoon back in, put the lid back on, good to go.
Heart is your restless is your heart. Till it rests on God. Until it rests on God. If you rest on God, then your restlessness will disappear. This is Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga teaches formless, restlessness stage. What you should be a little restless. Otherwise you cannot remove your restlessness. This is the technique. If the water enters into the air, so you have to pour more water inside. Is it not? Then you bend it and give pressure. Then water will come out.
In April 1996, we had a worldwide program here in New York.
That was when Swami Pragyananda first came to the West. So he was introduced as part of that program.
And it was over near the Lincoln Tower.
And I remember Baba was laying on the white couch and they brought him out. He was laying on the couch the whole time.
Everybody was there. Many people from Europe, many people from all over the United States. It was a huge, huge gathering. And you could feel the spiritual energy in the room. Everybody got their picture taken with Baba.
It was a very good program. I remember that.
But the most amazing story I have about Gurudev is in the year 2000, I was very sick. I went to the doctors and they told me that I had a large blood clot in my lung and that they thought that I was going to die. So I told my friend to call up Gurudev in Florida. And he spoke to Gurudev and he said, Gurudev, Nimkroli Baba is very sick. Gurudev said, what's the matter? He said he has a blood clot in his lung and that if he doesn't do what the doctors say, he's going to die. Gurudev said, you tell Nimkroli Baba to believe and pray to God and Gurus, and I will pray for him and tell him that everything will be all right. When my friend told me this and the doctors came to me, I said, I do not want any resuscitation. I don't want any chest tubes. I don't want anything. I'm going to be okay. And they said, if you don't have this, you'll die within a day or two. I said, that's okay. I said, I have a doctor who told me that everything was going to be okay. And if I die, I'll go someplace better. I trust my teacher. But they said, he's not a doctor. I said, but he's someone better. And that night, I was in intensive care. I was on a morphine drip for the pain. About 1:30 in the morning, I woke up. I felt someone standing by the side of my bed. I tried turning around to look, but I was so filled with tubes, I couldn't see. So I said, Doctor, is somebody there? Is somebody there? Are you going to help me? am I going to die? But within a few minutes, I felt relaxed, comfortable. It felt like everything was okay. But I didn't see who was there. So I buzzed the nurse, and I said to the nurse, who was there? She said, nobody. She says, I'm the only one here, and there was nobody here. I said, but somebody was here. No, she said, you were on morphine. She said, you probably had a hallucination. The next day the doctor came, the lung surgeon, and she said, I don't understand. Your lungs are not filling with fluid. Your high temperature seems to be stabilized, and your oxygen level seems to be leveling off. She said, we'll wait another day to see what happened. The next day, everything seemed to be going down. They were amazed. I was in intensive care for 4 days, and they didn't do a thing, and everything was okay. When I was able to travel, I came to see Gurudev, and he asked me, how are your lungs? And I never told him that my lungs, but he said to me, how are your lungs? And I said, Baba, and I bowed to him. I said, they're fine. I'm here, thank you.
After Baba had been in Europe for a while and he was returning, I was down on the corner across from Chuck's gallery. I had spent about an hour selecting the perfect rose for Baba. It was a time when I had very little money. As an artist, I had almost no money. So I spent this $1 to buy the perfect rose. And I came with my rose this way, and Baba was walking on the sidewalk this way. And when I bowed to offer him the rose, he pushed the rose aside and he said, this is the flower I want, pointing to my third eye. It just, so incredible.
As a friend in Kriya said, after Baba was gone, you would always almost want to open your eyes to look and see if those orange socks were there. Because he would walk around the room and you would look and he would be in front of you and you would see the orange socks. So he's always like there, in your mind, he's always there.
All my love will run towards thee, O Lord, towards thee, towards thee, towards thee. Thy জনমোর সকল ভালোবাসা প্রভু তোমার পানে, তোমার পানে, তোমার পানে। Let all my love run towards thee, O Lord, towards thee, towards thee, towards thee.